So I've talked quite a bit there, and I want to come back to ask Madeline. You may have noticed some comments made in the chat window, perhaps, but you may also have some things that you'd love to add, chip in to what I've said. So Madeline, over to you.
The chat is absolutely going off. So there's a lot of comments in there that I'd love to pick up on. But I found it very interesting that Joe mentioned that the rootedness gesture reminds her that we are nature. And I have this feeling because I found that Suha in its evolution so far has been so amazingly generative that when people start to get the really understand the Suha understandings, that people start making connections as they're actually being made in the chat about ah this other thing could fit with this and oh, I've got this Suha move in my own life. And Chris and I, like in the course, we teach a certain amount of moves, but there's always room for each individual to bring their perspective and their creativity to this as well. So often people will find, oh yes, I do this in my own life, and that feels really, that feels like an expression of Suha. And it might already be something that has an embodied prompt gesture to it. And if it's not, then maybe that person will think, okay, what feels like it could work well for me is that aspect, and they'll actually make that into their move. So one thing we're dreaming up down the line is a Suha card deck where there's a selection of Suha moves, all each has its own card. And if and when we do get to doing that, the plan is to allow at least 15 blank cards per deck, because the generative aspect of this is so much that people can fill those cards with the Suha moves that they come to recognize and acknowledge and practice in their own lives. That's what came to me just then, Chris, and I can attempt to speak some of the things from the chat. There is a lot in there. Catherine was saying that this makes her think of creating new neurological networks in the brain to respond in more healthy ways. And I think there's a really interesting angle there about how the embodied prompt gestures would interact with that creating of new neural networks. Um, and people have been being really enthusiastic. And Nadia said, I like the spiral expanding from me to you and us and into the future. And Joe picked up on that and said, yes, like the active hope spiral too, which maybe shows that. So yeah, there's a lot there. Would you like me to pick up on anything else, Chris, or do we need to move on?
This is some really great to hear, and just on that repatterning, there's a term neuroplasticity and another term neurogenesis. And there used to be this idea, or certainly when I grew up, I came across this idea that we have a limited number of brain cells, and by the time we're even in our 20s, the brain's not really going to grow much, and so we are as we are, and we kind of get stuck a particular way. And actually, the research has shown that that's not accurate. That drawing on advances in neurophysiology, and they've done functional brain scans where they can look at the activity of the brain, and they can also do structural brain scans where they actually look at the structure of the brain. What they found is that, for example, people in later life who learn to juggle, parts of the brain involved in hand-eye coordination expand. You actually get new brain cells develop, neurogenesis. Also, it's been shown that even something like a number of weeks of mindfulness meditation training can actually change the pathways in the brain, change the activity, the areas that light up, particularly to do with the prefrontal cortex, part of the brain that tends to light up more when it's active, when people are happier, that it can actually change the way the brain works. And what seems to make a real difference in terms of brain training, mind training, is a way of doing a little often. That when you get into a regular habit of doing something, it actually changes your brain pathways. And this is where I don't know how many of you have practices that you like to do, well-being practices, but a common complaint I hear when people are learning practices is it's so difficult to keep to it. And drawing on, I mean, my background's really in health behavior change, looking at what it is that supports sustainable patterns of behavior change. And one of the keys is looking at what supports new habits. And we have the Suha move daily practice. And this is actually based on a Kundalini move. So thank you, Grace, who taught me this. As you tap on each different finger, daily practice. And I do this sometimes when I'm just walking along. When I'm walking along, I just go daily practice. And I say it to myself, I go, Chris, daily practice, daily practice. And actually, I'll go a bit further with this because I like the rhythm of it. That lights me up. I love the kind of daily practice, daily practice. So while I'm walking, um, it says, okay, what is my daily practice? Well, one of my daily practice, there's a Suha move called exercise snack. And it's really challenging this idea that exercise, while good for you, there's a feeling, oh, well, to exercise, I need to do this and I need to do that. I need to book my gym membership. I need to get a new pair of trainers. How will I look? I need to get, all of these. I can't do this unless I do that. There's all these obstacles in the way. But the idea of an exercise snack is it's something you can do just over 2 or 3 minutes with very little preparation. And so the move for exercise snack is you just go exercise snack. And you can do it just for a few minutes, particularly, I don't know how many of you are like me. I do a lot of sitting. And there's a saying that sitting is the new smoking. If we do it too much, it increases our chance of catching getting all kinds of health problems and actually dying earlier, particularly diabetes and depression. Sitting a lot is a risk factor for them. So when I've been sitting a long time, I might just get up. I invite you to do this as well. If you'd like to, you might just get up and you go exercise snack. And they go really well together. And when you get Suha moves that go together, that's what we call a Suha recipe. So a Suha recipes, and I go daily practice exercise snack, daily practice of the Suha wrap, daily practice exercise snack, daily practice of the Suha rap. And I get bit, that's me. I get a bit carried away with these things. So I go Suha, Suha, sustainable happiness. Suha is a system for improving our wellness. Suha, Suha, it's personal and collective based on practices that we know to be effective. And there's something about making it a bit fun too. When you inhabit a state of fun, and if you have experience of playing with um, kittens, puppies, or young children, that kind of baby animal nature can actually be a great antidote from being too serious. But somehow there's something of that in the Suha tradition too. And again, this is customization. Find your own right level of each of these things. I'm wondering how this is. What would you like to add here, Madeline? I'm just sharing some of the ways that I use Suha on a regular basis, reminding myself what's my daily practice, but also how I have a Suha repertoire of like cards I play that I draw upon and how I find it helpful to meet with others where we review the Suha moves that we're finding helpful. How about you, Madeline? Do you have any favorite moves you'd like to bring into our conversation?
Yes, yes, I do. And I think one of the things that I found especially heartening from the first Suha pilot group was the real individual way that each person in the group took Suha into their life and how they came back with different things. So some people incorporated it like with yoga and added breathing to the prompt gestures. And other people would use it as like in a particular time of their day and they'd have like a sequence that worked for them, and all these different ways. And for me, I do find that once I've started one move, they do tend to flow into each other. So one move will prompt another for me, and it will. So one that I really love is the A plus C equals T. And this is the based on the acceptance and commitment therapy. And as another example of individuation, the Chris and I actually do the embodied prompt gesture for this slightly differently. So I do like A plus C equals T. And I think that last bit Chris will do as a T like this. And so it really is because it is like our own embodied prompt gesture. We can play around and see like what works best for me. So quite often, if I will find that maybe I'm in a post-lunch slump, and that would be the time where I might fall into a happiness trap. I might end up doing some scrolling randomly and lose it, however long, and have all sorts of negative influence. And I'll be there and I'll just do, so again, I also do a different one. I do daily practice on the palm of my hand. So I do daily practice. And just somehow now my body has got into a way, it happened really quickly where I'll make that move and I'll be like, okay. And then I'll move straight from that into the A plus C equals T. And I'll think of three things, one after the other, that I am accepting. And for each thing, I'll make a commitment. And for each thing, when I've got those two aspects, the acceptance and the commitment, I bring them together. And I just take a moment to feel how therapeutic that has felt to me to actually bring those two aspects together. And it flows on into other ones, but I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Chris. You.
Well, I just want to pick up on Catherine's comment, though very helpful, Catherine. You're talking about how you can move away from the taskmaster way of being, and someone suggested devotion versus discipline for meeting goals, and um, devotion feels more loving and still strong, and um, I'm thinking here of Julia Cameron, and she wrote this book, The Artist's Way. And one of the things she says in there is that enthusiasm is a better playmate than discipline. And she's talking about what helps people have a creativity practice where every day they show up and write or paint or whatever it is. But if you do it out of the discipline of, I must do this, it can feel heavier than um, where's the enthusiasm? And how do I make it something I want to do? And I I'm remembering one of my deep learnings from working in addictions recovery field for so long was the expression, find the want behind the should. Find the want behind the should. Because a lot of sustainability can feel very shouldy and discipline, and even can sometimes be seen as a robber of joy. That to be more sustainable, I have to give up this and give up that. But what we're looking at with Suha is to find the want behind the should, and actually saying that if we want to have really satisfying lives, we need to recognize the happiness trap of unsuha that's making more people depressed and anxious and making our world more scary and depressing. And so we need to have a great turning, this larger shift, but also how do we find the want behind the should? And this is where restoring, we change the story of sustainability, saying if you want to have a really good life, you want to find out about how you bring sustainability and justice and happiness together, how you can live in a way that puts out ripples of well-being that makes your life more satisfying. And that's what we look at by bringing together these well-being practices, resilience tools that help us when things go wrong, and also the change-making skills and understandings. And and one change-making skill or understanding is just that difference between make something happen and help something happen. So I'm thinking, Catherine, about the um, move from taskmaster mode. Maybe I should make myself become more this or more that. But another approach is, how do I help myself become more the way that I want to be? Through recognizing choice points in each day. I'm aware of our time, and one choice point we wanted to invite you to join us in this continued journey. And the first step is that we've opening and developing a free first step introductory course, which you are on right now. This webinar is part of, and we'll have the recording of this webinar there as part of it too. And if you go to collegeofwellbeing.com, there will be a link there for introducing Suha. That's stage one. But also, if we want to widen the time frame beyond the moment to look at the year, how do we have a year that at the end of the year we look back, we have this lovely term, afterglow. Afterglow is the lovely warm feeling of satisfaction when we look back at things that have happened that we feel glad about. And this is a way that we can grow treasure inside ourselves, the treasure of satisfaction from looking back at things that we feel good about. And so we've got a course. I'm just going to do the share screen. Um, Share. Here we go. And we're going to move back just a bit. Oh, pardon me. Dum, 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 dum. To here. We're calling this How to Help Your Year Go Well. And in a way, that's what Suha is about. It's a set of insights and practices that help your year go well in a way that also helps our year go well. How can we look at not just our personal year, but also our collective year? And in a way that, okay, it's not going to make the year go well, but could it help the year go well? Um, it's 6 till 9. UK time, whatever time that is for wherever you are in the world. And we've got a price that we charge. And if the price is something that stands in the way, we also have a pay what you can policy where we invite you to make an offer of what you can reasonably afford to pay if one of the Suha courses is out of reach. So that's one step, but we're also wanting to draw together another group who are going to explore this together. That this is the move of afterglow. This is the move of active hope. This is the move of A plus C equals T, that when you can bring them together, the impact is therapeutic. And I'm just wanting to point to some pieces of the jigsaw that these courses explore in more detail. And what this course goes on, the 8-week course goes on a journey about how we understand the story of Suha and let it happen through our lives. How we grow treasure inside ourselves, but also between ourselves, growing treasure in our relationships. How do we support nourishing relationships? And then also at a time where there's so much disturbing events happening in our world, but also maybe disturbing events happening in our lives, in our families, in our communities. What helps us face the storm in a way where we can acknowledge that it's happening and then develop our best response? So facing the storm includes facing the feelings that come up when you look at the horrors that can be so disturbing, and find ways to be less not flat or overwhelmed by that. Really drawing on some of the work from Joanna Macy, the work that reconnects, that she and I also wrote about in our book Active Hope. And then also saying, well, okay, facing that, what helps is looking at change making skills, what helps us find our flow. And I love this term, through utopian adventure, drawing on the work of Rupert Reed, and particularly the way it's also been developed by Amanda Scott. The idea of a through-topian adventure is the adventure of finding a way through. And that may also be when we're facing difficulty in our own lives, but also difficulty in the world, so that we can play a role in transforming our culture. And that we have our next 8-week course starting on the 21st of February. And we plan to run these periodically throughout out the year. That's just a rundown of some of the things that are coming up. And I'm just wondering, Madeline, is there anything else that you'd like to add as we're just approaching the end of our webinar together?
It's just a sense of the potential future for Suha. So we're kind of talking about this rippling out, and it feels like the 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 people who emerged from the first group taking it on in all these different ways, and then as you're saying that we plan to run these, um, when we can. But then I feel like there is the potential for a network and for this to develop in all sorts of ways that we might not even be able to imagine now. And we've already got people like incorporating it and using it in coaching and but I have this sense of the potential for peer support networks and all sorts of things. I just wanted to sow that seed here as well.
That anyone here could become a Suha teacher, a Suha guide, and that you might weave Suha into approaches that you already use, like Grace in her yoga class now weaves in some Suha. A number of people who are on the last Suha course who are coaches think of themselves as Suha coaches, actually weave it into their coaching. And it may be that it's something you use to support yourself in your work with other people. It may be something that you weave into your work, but it may also be something that you weave into your family life. That speaking to someone who does some forest school teaching with young children, really wanting to invite embodied um, kind of exploration, just thought, hey, this is a perfect fit. This is something that I can weave into my work with young people. So we don't know how it will go. We love using it ourselves, and we do use it ourselves. And this is a work in progress. So if you feel drawn to it, maybe you'll be part of Team Suha, and it will be something you are on the edge of taking forward. We hope so. Suha, Suha, sustainable happiness. Suha is a system for improving our wellness. Suha, Suha protects our mental health, growing inner treasure, growing inner wealth. Suha, Suha is personal and collective, based on practices that we know to be effective. Suha, Suha is playful and it's fun. It helps us play our part in the work that must be done.